And for the next 20 minutes, we're going to be talking about efficiency and innovation with generative AI. So this generative AI, everybody's talked about it and everybody's used it. In simple terms, it just helps you do things faster, better. It's very much an augmentation meant to help you in tasks you're intending on doing and help you do them better and faster, be it creating content, be it summarizing reports, be it finding data, be it creating responses, creating documents, all of those points. And what we have at AWS, we have a three-layer stack for a reason, which is we've got a number of already relatively proven use cases at the top layer of the stack with our Amazon Q services. Then we have Amazon Bedrock in the middle layer, where you can actually develop, program any custom use cases that is relevant to your organization. And then the bottom layer, if you're really interested in optimizing, having more control, more granularity, more details, and more flexibility, okay? All of those services are available. You can go down all the way to the hardware accelerators. So I'm going to start at the top of the stack because I think many organizations can really benefit from some of these services that come with relatively proven in organizations. We have Amazon Q Developer, intended for IT professionals and developers. And we have Amazon Q Business, intended for business users across all business functions. With Amazon Q Developer, developers become much more productive. And there are a number of ways you can measure that. We've seen developer productivity ranging from 20% to 50% improvement. We've seen faster code upgrades, in some of their clients. We've seen faster software delivery. And it's really down to how do you take that capacity that has been released, that efficiency, and how do you translate that efficiency to a business advantage, be it through accelerating and developing more products, more features, or allocating those resources towards different function, innovation and whatnot. Similarly with Q Business, we're seeing customers realizing sales productivity, where sales engineers, folks, are really generating sales plays much faster. They're getting intelligence around their customers, how to interact with them, how to develop their sales pitches much faster with the use of generative AI and Amazon Q Business. But also increase in user engagement, increase in aspects of employee onboarding. And we'll talk about these kind of use cases in a bit. So really, these are some of the proven services that we have that are really focused towards a set of use cases. And the question is, well, how do we embark on this? How do we get started? And so Amazon Q Developer can help you across a whole cohort of software development, from code upgrades to writing code to inspecting code, figuring what a particular piece of code does, writing test cases, planning for those code development, all sorts of things. But what's really important is to consider a sort of a journey, a process, right? And this is one that often happens with software development lifecycle, where there's planning done, and then you create code, and then you have test cases, followed by putting that into operation, and then maintaining it. And across all of those stages, Amazon Q Developer can help, right? So it can really help you around how to create a plan, how to even develop user stories, how to develop code in certain languages that are supported, developing test cases against those user stories, how to bring it to production on AWS, and then how to continuously refine, improve, upgrade that code base. And it gets integrated in some of the most well-known IDEs, environments for software developers. And you can easily simply chat with Amazon Q Developer. So I have an example here. I want to show you a demo of how simple it gets. This is about just trying to figure out what a piece of code is doing. So as you can see, you can just basically come to this Amazon Q and try to just ask it, what does this code do? How does it operate? And this is super useful when you have teams collaborating and code is getting shared, or people are on holidays, they're absent for whatever reason, and another engineer needs to step in to address any kind of questions, any issues, bugs, fixing things. So it generates information. It also helps you where to find things if you need to find a particular piece of snippet of code that executes a certain function. And that's how some of our most senior developers are using this today, because they get this new code base and try to figure out what is it trying to do and how to best optimize it. Similarly, junior developers are constantly talking to Amazon Q Developer from a chat perspective. What can it help me with? You know, what should I do? How should I plan this? How should I write this? What's the best way to do the coding? And similarly, even code completion becomes really relevant, where senior developers can use Amazon Q Developer to really just write code faster, that they already know what to do and what to write. Now, in terms of integration, it's very easy. So here are 3 well-known IDEs, but in most IDEs, if you try to just search for Q Developer, you'll be able to download it, install it. It's freely available in most of these IDEs. There's also a pro version. I'll talk about that. But essentially, it's very easy to get going and make software development more productive through the use of generative AI with Amazon Q Developer. Now, particular use cases that we've seen, the first one is very much the developer productivity, looking at how they can generate better code, faster, go through more user stories and whatnot. Second aspect is app modernization. There's a lot of legacy applications that can benefit from this kind of tool, and we're seeing that developers are using Amazon Q Developer in order to modernize from an old version of, say, Java to a new version. Now we've also had announcements this week around .NET support, so that's going to be more and more useful. Around really understanding how to use AWS infrastructure, how to create templates from CloudFormation to other kinds of efficiencies using AWS infrastructure. And lastly, around the whole DevOps, having that generative AI powered DevOps across the whole lifecycle of CI/CD. Now, what I want to show you is how easy it is to basically transform code. And let me see if it's, yeah. There's a bit of a glitch. Let me just try to go back and run again. Apologies. So here's where you look at code transformation. As you can see, you can just simply put transform, and you should be able to see an output, and it sort of jumped. But it also gives you options as to which source code to what source code, what is your code base. It provides a whole draft code for you to use in order to modernize a piece of legacy code to a new code, and you can basically execute that. So you can review that code, and if you're happy with it, basically accept those changes so they will be applied to your code base. Now, Q Developer comes in 2 forms. As I said, you can easily download the free version across most of the IDEs, and then there's a pro version, which has a subscription associated with it. And in many cases, the pro version actually allows you to use this particular tool with a higher limits. So there's more usage that is allowed than the Q Developer perspective. I'm going to move on to, and we have a number of partners that can really help around implementing this within the organization. But I want to also move on to Q Business, where you can really, any kind of business user can use it in order to introspect the document information within the organization, create solutions, create documents, be able to get to the answers faster, and even present this to some of the end users. So here's an example of a use case. If you want to create an onboarding plan for an employee, and this is where Q Business can really help you. Can connect to some of the internal data sources and generate an onboarding plan, and you can basically ask it to further detail this, expand on this, and develop one that can really help new employees get onboarded into a particular business function or business process. Now, with Q Business, there's a number of advantages where you can basically connect to many of the internal data sources within the enterprise organization, and you're able to use them just by means of intuitive UI that comes out of Q Business to be able to create reports, emails, summarize tasks, documents, and whatnot. But also there's Q apps where employees who have built certain use cases that are finding to be valuable, they can share this across the organization. So employees can now innovate, identify use cases that are useful, and also share internally across the organization through the Q apps function in Amazon Q. We have a number of built-in integrators, and these really help around bringing data, augmenting that with generative AI in order to generate the output. And we're continuously increasing the number of connectors, and the whole point is to have this as a single point where you can really inspect and use and become more productive within the organization. Tap into your sales data from Salesforce, ServiceNow integration, looking at some of the tickets, what's been happening at the contact center with regards to, and connecting these dots so that you can have a complete 360 view of the customer and be able to really become more productive with those customer engagements. Some of the use cases, knowledge management, as I talked about, in many cases it's around identifying, getting hold of the knowledge that you have within the organization. The second one is around human resources, guided onboarding, where Amazon Q Business can really help you with the new employees who really need to get up to a certain level, really create that onboarding plan, allow them to actually interact with Amazon Q Business to ask some of the most frequently asked questions or basic questions in order to get onboarded with the business function. Customer and IT support, questions such as how do I change my password, how do I get reimbursed for my business expenses and whatnot. All of that can be answered with Amazon Q Business. Field operations, where you have people in the field, they can tap into a lot of this information and be able to figure out how to diagnose or operate certain machinery. And last one around risk and compliance, looking at how do you make sure that some of the reports that have been generated are compliant against certain standards and whatnot. So these are some of the use cases that we often see organizations use internally for Amazon Q Business. Now again, this comes with two versions of Lite and Pro, where Pro gives you also access to some of the additional features, connectors, as well as Amazon Q and QuickSight, where you're able to actually interact with a dashboard environment within a BI tool, QuickSight, where you can actually generate reports from text and natural language. Again, we have a number of partners who are supporting in this area as well, who can really help customers get onboarded. And with that, I want to move on to the middle layer of the stack, Amazon Bedrock, where you can actually start to build any custom solution. Now, I just have a single slide on this. I don't want to go deep on this, but essentially, with Amazon Bedrock, now you have more control. You can actually select a particular type of foundation model from a whole array of foundation models, invoke them based on API, so you don't have to manage the infrastructure. The infrastructure is managed for you. It's a managed service, higher level abstraction. You can customize those models with your own internal data. You can have RAG, where you can actually make sure that it brings responses that are relevant to your business needs and sort of indexes the entire enterprise data for you. Agents, and we've had some announcements regarding some of these features, such as Amazon Nova models that are now available as part of Amazon Bedrock, the multi-agent collaboration that's going to be part of the agents, security, privacy, data governance that comes built in with Amazon Bedrock. But the last thing to consider is that you often can also bring your own UI. This is where Amazon Q Business or Q Developer had their own UI, but with Amazon Bedrock, you've got this flexibility and control, but also you can bring your own UI and build your own UI into existing applications. So next steps, how do we move forward? How do we try out these solutions and services? Three-step process. First one is it's best to do a proof of value to sort of assure that this is meeting your requirement. This is actually becoming a viable solution within an organization. Second one is to gain that line of business acceptance, that this is actually indeed meeting our needs and this is providing those acceptable business outcomes intended at the start. And lastly, have enterprise adoption, where you have change management framework in order to help your users, be it developers, be it business users, actually help and gain usage of this within the organization. I want to double down on the proof of value because it's important to talk about how should we be running this. Often we see that 1 to 2 weeks are actually spent just identifying what is the aim, what is the objective, what are the KPIs that we should be measuring. Where is it that if we talk about moving the needle, well, that moving the needle should be associated with a particular business KPI. What are those? And I'll talk about a whole array of hosts of options that are associated with both Q Developer and Q Business. But very much, this is where business and technology talk together and align around what's a measurable success criteria for these POCs. Secondly, executing. So once you have alignment on that success criteria, then you execute at a small scale with a select number of users. Often you need to give it time, 8 to 10 weeks, to be able to really measure something that is statistically significant in terms of outcome. And then finally, you evaluate. You look at, well, how did it perform from a control and test group model? People who use the tool against people who didn't use the tool. So in many cases, there's an A/B testing done in order to look at whether this tool was actually delivering on the promises or the hypothesis that was initially set or not within the organization. Now, as I said, it's really important to identify which business metrics. And here's a whole array of business metrics that we've seen our customers use when it comes to Q Developer. It could be related to number of commits, the release of, speed of the releases, lead time on releases, the code quality, right? Number of bugs identified in the code. It could be related to security, number of security scans that have been run against the code, from efficiency and time saving. But it's really important to, upfront, talk about what does success look like, and which one of these KPIs we should be measuring at the end of the program so that we're aligned around a specific KPI around whether this POC was successful or not. Similarly, with Q Business, again, we have from time saving, from reduction of time spent in searching for information, to knowledge accessibility and utilization, increasing the number of documents, resources accessed, or documents even produced, decision-making efficiency, content creation. So these are all kind of, business metrics that business and technology can talk about at the start to align around what is the goal of that POC and to be aligned around how we're going to be measuring the success of it after the 10 or 12 weeks. In simple terms, what I recommend is that, think about experimenting this. It's really about experimenting to learn about technology, but also learning about your own organization. And in many cases, it's the second one, where throughout the experimentations, many of the organizations have actually found out valuable information around their own business, their own data, their own organizational readiness, their people, change management, and technology is part of it. But actually, those exercises and those proof of values really provide a really good opportunity to learn more about your organization. And finally, it's really around change management. It's really around making sure that the end users are brought along from the start of the journey all the way to the end, so that these are successful engagements and successfully adopted within an organization. I've got some information, QR codes, if you're interested in more information around Amazon Q Developer and Amazon Q Business. And I won't be able to take any questions now at the session, but I'll be at the AWS Partner Network Generative AI booth. So if you have any questions, you can come and meet us there, and we'll be happy to talk to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.